Could there be a place on Earth that could take you to another dimension? In 1997, a phone on an American radio show rang. The employee picked up the phone and got probably one of the most unusual calls in his career. A man on the other end of the line introduced himself as Mel Waters. He started a story about how he discovered a pretty unusual hole on the rural property he owned that was near Ellensburg, Washington. "I used a fishing line and a weight to measure it. According to my calculations, it's 80,000 feet deep," Mel claimed. "And some weird paranormal things have been going on here." He was talking about a black beam that could come out of the hole and shoot into the sky during certain day periods. He believed the hole had magical powers, like restoring life in animals and allegedly setting ice on fire. Yep, the ice in question didn't melt. It burned like coal. The call went public. Mel managed to convince many listeners his story was true. One geologist, named Jack Powell, was especially interested in the story he had heard on the radio. He found it somewhat curious, particularly because Mel claimed it was basically the bottomless pit. Jack was in geology for decades, and he was familiar with the fact that the deepest shaft goes a bit over 40,000 feet below the surface. Jack started to investigate that mysterious case, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find the hole. Further investigation led to the fact that they later couldn't even find a person named Mel Waters that lived close to Ellensburg, Washington. After the phone call went public, the mysterious Mel even claimed some tried to pay him off to stop talking about the hole. This whole story became an urban legend. Later, many people claimed they found that hole and saw weird things happening there. They heard strange noises coming out of the hole. Others saw lights and unusual creatures coming out of the hole, and some believe the hole goes all the way down to the center of our planet, whereas others go so far to think it's a secret portal to another dimension. A few people think Mel's hole is a spot where space and time are warped. People or objects that enter it never come back, and no one sees them ever again. Of course, those are all just different theories. After all, no one still knows if Mel's hole even exists or not. That deepest hole in the world we've mentioned before, the one that actually exists, is called Kola Super Deep Borehole, and it's human-made. It's covered and welded shut, and it sits among the abandoned ruins of one project site. It took people who made it around 20 years to reach that many miles under the surface. What stopped them at such depths are 2.7 billion-year-old rocks. They were at temperatures of about 356 degrees Fahrenheit, which was almost twice as hot as the team thought it would be. A hole this deep may seem like something from horror movies, but here's something that will comfort you. It's just 9 inches in diameter. That means you can't just wander around and accidentally fall inside of it, which, you have to admit, makes it a bit less scary after all. But many locals are still very afraid of it and are not comfortable with this hole. Many of them claim they hear terrifying screams at night coming out of it. If you decide to enter Krubera Cave, one of the deepest ones on the Earth, know that it could take days or even weeks to reach the bottom. This massive cave complex is located in Georgia, and it goes over a mile under the surface. It even got the nickname of being the Everest among other cave systems. The cave system looks really scary. Imagine going down there. But it's also home to a fascinating diversity of wildlife. There's also a basin filled with water at its bottom. The Berkeley Pit is a toxic hole. It's a former open-pit copper mine located in the western part of the United States. The hole is a mile long and half a mile wide. It's 1,780 feet deep, which is taller than the Empire State Building, and nearly half of it is filled with heavily acidic water. It has a similar level of acidity to gastric acid or lemon juice. This pit is full of dangerous chemicals and heavy metals. The water at the surface is red because of all those heavy metals that float around, like breadcrumbs in this poisonous soup. This soup has ended the lives of many birds that tried to land in the water at some point. If you want, you can even go there, pay the ticket, and check the pit out from a safe distance. It's a perfect day. It's not cloudy, the sun is out, and you're in the tropics, swimming in the sea. The water is crystal clear. So clear, it seems like you could see the bottom of where you're swimming. You look down and all you can see is darkness. The bottom is deep down below you, and if your imagination runs wild, you'll see giant sea monsters coming from down there right away. And that's how it feels to be above Dean's Blue Hole. It's nearly circular at the surface, but if you dive a bit deeper, it suddenly widens into a 4 times wider cavern. It's located on Long Island in the Bahamas, and it goes 663 feet below the surface, which makes it the second deepest hole in the world. It's a sinkhole filled with salt water that has an entrance below the water level. Such sinkholes can form in different processes. For instance, when rainwater soaks through fractures of limestone bedrock directly onto the water table. And in the case of this pit, the sea level has changed too. It got higher compared to, let's say, the Ice Age from 15,000 years ago. This one is Mount Baldy Sinkhole in Indiana. It was a beautiful sunny afternoon. A woman named Erin was on Mount Baldy, just finishing her scientific study of wind speeds. She was happy with how things were going, but suddenly, a bad hunch erased the smile off her face. She turned around and saw a man in his swim trunks. He was desperately clawing at the sand. "He's right here!" he yelled, while his wife was near him, panicking and in shock. Their 6-year-old son had disappeared, simply vanished down a hole. Erin didn't see any sign of an opening. She saw no upturned sand, which you'd expect to see if a person had just dug a hole. More and more people were coming to help, and someone called 911. She couldn't believe that something like that could happen. She thought their son was just hiding somewhere around, waiting to jump out and surprise them. So she went home. But later, she saw it on the news. The rescue team had managed to save their son. They found him 11 feet under the surface of a dune, and it was a complete shock for her. We're in such an advanced era when the robotic arms of spaceships scoop sand on Mars and then tell us its chemistry. And here, you can take a simple walk to the beach and still end up surprised by such geologic mysteries, like a hole that appears out of nowhere. Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory looks like a hole you'd see in some scary science fiction movies. This Antarctic research station is located at the South Pole and 3 times as large as the world's tallest building. This enormous hole made of metal and ice is frozen and isolated, and it reaches depths of around 8,200 feet. Scientists hope to use it to understand neutrino particles better, and through that, learn more about dark matter. It's the mysterious substance that makes up almost 30% of the universe. No one can see it directly, but scientists assume it's there. They believe it affects the movements of stars and galaxies.
Well, we've been miscalling Uranus all this time. Actually, astronomers say we should be pronouncing it like Uranus, not Uranus. I can't say a different stress changes much, though. However, things could have been different. Initially, Uranus was supposed to have the majestic king-like name of George, because astronomers wanted to name it after King George III. In the end, they changed their minds, and now, well, it's the punchline of every joke. If you take the total cost of launching a mission and divide it by the weight of the cargo, you'll see some pretty mind-blowing figures. According to specialists, back in 2016, it used to cost $10,000 to send just 1 pound of cargo into space. But now, prices have gone through the roof. Cygnus spacecraft's cargo costs over $43,000 per pound, while SpaceX's new carriers come in at around $27,000 per pound. Remember how hard it is to pay $5 for water at airports? Now, a bottle of water in space would cost somewhere between $9,000 and $43,000, and that's only to have it delivered in space. Now, as for water in space, well, it used to be considered a super rare thing. But in reality, there's water ice all over our solar system, so you don't have to buy those overpriced 43K water bottles. It's hanging out there in comets, asteroids, and even in hard-to-see craters on Mercury and the Moon. We're not sure if there's enough water in these places to support colonies of people, though. Mars also has ice at its poles, hiding under the surface dust and frost. Even smaller celestial bodies, like Saturn's moon Enceladus and dwarf planet Ceres, have ice. NASA scientists think there might be a chance of finding life on Jupiter's moon Europa. There might be liquid water beneath its icy shell. Europa, even though it's a lot smaller than Earth, might have an ocean deep enough to hold twice as much water as all the oceans on our planet combined. In 2009, scientists exploring a massive cloud of dust and gas in the center of our galaxy stumbled upon a fascinating surprise. They found ethyl formate within the cloud. This chemical is responsible for the delightful flavor of raspberries and has a rum-like scent. Furthermore, another nearby region is brimming with ethyl alcohol, the same type found in many beverages. In fact, there is enough alcohol in this region to provide every person on Earth with 300,000 pints of beer every day for the next billion years. Now, believe it or not, we do have a black hole on Earth. The thing is, creating an in-lab black hole was a sort of indispensable thing to do. Studying black holes in real space remains a distant dream, so it was only possible to create one to experiment with in a lab. A group of scientists in the Netherlands wanted to explore the mysterious Hawking radiation theory proposed by the iconic Stephen Hawking. Using atoms to mimic an event horizon, they orchestrated electrons, causing a surge in temperature that resembled flat spacetime. As particles moved through quantum fluctuations, a ring of infrared radiation appeared around the lab-grown black hole, mirroring Hawking's idea. So, if you totally understood what I just said, could you please explain it to me? Now, it may sound insane, but you can totally be allergic to the moon. Long story short, it was the final Apollo mission, and they brought back more rock samples than ever before. Plus, they had the first and only pro-scientist on the moon, Jack Schmitt. He was a geologist, and his rock samples helped scientists learn more about the moon's magnetic field and volcanic history. During the expeditions, it became evident that Jack Schmitt was allergic to moon dust. The gritty, sticky powder clung to his suit and his skin, causing irritation in his sinuses, nose, eyes, and throat for a couple of hours after he took his helmet off. Meanwhile, neutron stars are extremely dense, being basically just a bunch of neutrons squished into a super small space. If you had just a teaspoonful of this stuff, it would weigh more than the entire human population combined. And to match the density of a neutron star, we'd all have to squeeze into the space the size of a sugar cube. No thanks. When it comes to outer space, we tend to think that Earth and the Moon are pretty close together. But in reality, you can actually squeeze all the other planets of our solar system between Earth and the Moon. The average distance between them is about 240,000 miles. If you added up the diameters of the 7 planets, you'd still have some room to spare, about 5,000 miles. In 2011, scientists made a groundbreaking discovery of a massive reservoir of water in space. This water, equivalent to 140 trillion times all the water in Earth's oceans, could provide each person on our planet with a planet's worth of water 20,000 times over. This reservoir was located near a massive black hole drawing in matter and emitting energy, known as a quasar. The water was formed by energy waves colliding hydrogen and oxygen atoms together, and it was found around 12 billion light-years away. So, when the Curiosity Mars rover snapped its very first sunset picture in 2015, scientists were practically doing backflips from excitement. Turns out, sunsets on the red planet are anything but red. They're actually a stunning shade of blue. According to NASA, the reason behind this phenomenon is that the dust in Mars' atmosphere is like a magical filter that lets blue light shine through while blocking out those warm tones like yellow, orange, and red. Well, Venus is a slow spinner compared to Earth. It takes this planet 243 days to make a full rotation, and it spins in the opposite direction. But even though Venus takes longer to spin around, it zooms around the Sun in just 225 days because it's located so close. So, believe it or not, a year on Venus is actually shorter than its day. So, you might think that the night sky should be full of stars with no dark spaces at all. This idea is known as Olbers' paradox, named after German astronomer Heinrich Wilhelm Olbers. He thought that if the universe was infinite, unchanging, and timeless, then we should see stars everywhere we look. But it turns out that the universe is not infinite, unchanging, or timeless. Edwin Hubble discovered that the universe is actually expanding, and the leftover radiation from the Big Bang tells us that the universe is about 13.8 billion years old. Think of all the birthday candles. Ooh! So, the reason we don't see stars in every direction is because some stars are just too far away, or they haven't been around long enough for their light to travel all the way to us. During the Apollo 16 lunar mission, Ken Mattingly, the command module pilot, had a bit of a scare when he realized his wedding ring was missing. The whole crew frantically searched the spacecraft for it, but no luck. Finally, on day 9, while Mattingly was on a spacewalk, the ring was spotted floating out the hatch door. Charles Duke Jr. tried to grab it but missed. Luckily, it bounced off Mattingly's helmet into Duke's hands. It's cool they found the ring, but there are many other things people left up there. There's even a toothbrush floating around somewhere. Mercury is already the tiniest planet in our solar system, not counting Pluto, of course, and the second densest after Earth. And believe it or not, it's actually shrinking and getting denser. For a long time, scientists thought Earth was the only planet with tectonic activity. But that all changed when the Messenger spacecraft flew by Mercury, giving us a detailed scan of the whole planet. In 2016, Messenger discovered these cool cliff-like formations called fault scarps. Since they're still relatively small, scientists think they're pretty new, suggesting that Mercury is still contracting 4.5 billion years after the solar system began. And around 10 years ago, Australian astronaut Luca Parmitano went through a near-drowning experience during his spacewalk due to a water leak that went unaddressed. Nobody knew how it happened and why Luca ended up having water in his helmet. NASA was investigating the issue for months, but they were unable to determine the exact cause of the water entering Luca's helmet.
This is it. The end! You're packing up everything you can in whatever bags you have. Food, clothes, toiletries. The news in the background goes on, red alerts flashing all over the screen. You check your watch, and you know it's time. You haven't even finished packing yet. You rush out of your house and see everyone else lugging suitcases hurriedly. You get in your car and drive out as fast as you can, dodging all the people running around. You arrive at a secluded place in the woods. You've been working on your personal bunker for years. It's able to withstand the worst conditions: tornadoes, hurricanes, volcanoes, and, hopefully, asteroids. You run to the bunker, hidden away next to some bushes and trees. There's no way anybody would know it's there. The door looks like the ones in bank vaults that contain huge piles of money. On the other side, a ladder that goes down 30 feet through a dark tunnel. The first thing you do is power up the place. It's all run on heavy-duty batteries, powered from solar panels above. As a backup, a fuel-powered generator. Hopefully you won't need to use it, but your life motto is, a person can't have too many fail-safes. The entire bunker is built from concrete and steel to maintain maximum durability. The walls are several feet thick. You can finally let out that sigh of relief, because you made it just in time. You suddenly feel the ground vibrate, the walls tremble. Fear tightens in your chest when all the cabinet doors shake open and the stored food starts tumbling out. Did you miscalculate? Is this thing gonna hold up? The asteroid made contact, far from where you are, but it feels like it fell right on top of you. The sound is deafening, and the shock waves seem to never end. The light flickers. The flying dust is hazing your vision and filling your lungs. You grab a mask with one final thought. This is it. The bunker's going to collapse. At least I tried. 1 month later. You're making breakfast after another sleepless night. Luckily, you stored more than enough food. And what variety! Canned tuna, corned beef, beans, sardines. Then there's the dried goods: rice, powdered milk, pasta, noodles, and even some treats: honey and chocolate. You also allowed yourself soda and juice, but water makes up most of your stored hydrators. This place has been and will continue to be your home for, who knows, weeks, months, years? The thought sends a chill down your spine. At least you're in an ideal location, far inland and away from any coast, so any possible tidal waves shouldn't have flooded your area. You can't imagine what it looks like up there. Please don't let it be like the dinosaurs Part 2. You need a distraction to take your thoughts away from the worst-case scenario. You walk through your house like a real estate agent giving a tour to potential buyers. At the entrance, you have the living quarters, a couch and coffee table with some outdated magazines and board games. In front of you, a small flat-screen TV with a DVD player. Sadly, no internet, but all those movies should keep you company. On a table nearby, you have a radio and telecommunications speaker that's like your ears and mouth to the outside. You also have your library with all sorts of books: classics, contemporary, and any genre, as long as it keeps your mind occupied. And if none of that helps you pass the time, there's always the video game consoles linked up to the TV. Ah yes, the gym area. It's modest, just a treadmill and some dumbbells. You try to get plenty of cardio and weightlifting in to keep yourself fit and healthy. Well, for someone living underground like a mole. Of course, you have the kitchen. It's got a good-sized mini fridge and a stainless steel sink with a bunch of cabinets storing all the goodies. You hook this place up with plumbing and pipes, bringing in clean drinking water. In case those stop working, you have water stored. The bathroom has a functioning toilet, sink, and a shower that's connected to the hot water pump. There's even a washer and dryer nearby. There's also a little workshop area. If something breaks, you can fix it here. You can also build some things out of scrap material, a chair or table if need be, a little figurine to put on the shelf and keep you company. Down some steps, you have another vital piece of the bunker, the greenhouse. It's all on lamps with artificial sunlight for obvious reasons. You'd be way worse off if you didn't have your fresh fruits and veggies. It's all self-sustaining too. Any rotten or bad crops go into making compost for the soil to keep it well nourished. You can forget about relying on meat for protein. Quinoa, beans, lentils, chickpeas, mushrooms, they get the job done. And just in case you're not getting every single mineral your body needs, you manage to stock up on multis. Vitamin D is a big one for life underground without the sun. Not far away from your little subterranean farm is your bedroom. It's got a queen-size bed, nightstand on the right, small wardrobe on the left. You don't have much variety in your attire, but who's gonna notice if you wear the same outfit twice? The dust mites? You go down a ladder to find the generator room. There's a reason why it's further underground and sealed with soundproof material. The generator kicks in every now and then, and it's pretty noisy. It's also hooked up with the ventilation system, so the exhaust goes outside. Then there's the lung room. All these weird-looking boxes are pumps that bring in oxygen from the outside world. But it has an advanced filtration system to clean the air before pumping it into your shelter. Down here is also the storage room. Every spare part of anything goes here. Extra couch, mattress, sinks. Even 2 freezers for those frozen goods, just in case. So, what's a day like in the bunker? First, whip up some breakfast and enjoy a cup of coffee. Then, you head over to the communication radio to hear if there's any news from the outside world. So far, there's been none. As soon as you're done, you head to the greenhouse for some quick farming. You really like being in there, because it feels like you're outside enjoying nature. At least a little bit. You pick anything that's ripe and bring it into the kitchen for a wash. And wouldn't you know it, it's lunchtime. You prepare yourself a nice salad of cucumbers, tomatoes, and lettuce, some beets on the side, pasta, and you eat it up. After lunch, you pop in a DVD you haven't watched in a while. After the movie, you go around and do a quick check on the oxygen levels in water. Today happens to be your scheduled generator checkup as well. You head down to the basement to glance at the fuel level and oxygen filters. All good so far. Though, the thought of an even more extended stay worries you. What if you run out of fuel? You spend a few hours in the workshop tinkering around. Currently, no fixer-upper projects, and you're not feeling especially creative today. So, you head to the gym. Today's leg day. You dread it. Some things never change. Before you know it, it's time for dinner. You heat up some noodles and chill in the living room, listening to some tunes in the music player. This place cost you a little over $100,000, from digging up the site to construction and finally installing all the necessary systems needed for survival. And that's not including the extra food and personal activities for the bunker. Yes, you're lucky. All those luxuries make life good. Almost. Nothing new from the outside world after a whole month. You've always been a bit of an introvert, but this place is starting to push you a little. You're getting lonely. The sound of the radio snaps you out of your thoughts. Static? No, a muffled voice. Someone's trying to contact you. You bolt over to the communication radio, nearly tripping over your own feet from the shock. We made it! Ha! You're overcome with emotion. You've gotten pretty used to your life underground, but it's finally time to swing the door open and head out into the world. The sea, this unrelenting water beast, has been defying all attempts to tame it for centuries. Many ships driven by the wind have gone through the harshest parts of the world. Some have survived the struggle with the sea, and many have come off second best. It's the year 1834. A ship called the Pilgrim is setting a course to sail from California to Boston. The journey will venture around South America and then past Cape Horn of Chile. Richard signs up as a merchant seaman aboard the Pilgrim. This is his first voyage at sea. The crew tells Richard stories of the Drake Passage off Cape Horn, a route that's legendary for its dangers. Countless ships and sailors have disappeared in those waters. Since Cape Horn's discovery in 1526, it's quickly become known to all those that have sailed around it as the ultimate test of any mariner's skill and of any ship's strength. Those that have survived the journey call Cape Horn a sailor's nightmare. Jack the helmsman, a salty veteran, steers the ship towards this most dangerous of all routes. Jack has been aboard the Pilgrim since it was first commissioned in 1825. He's passed by the Horn many times, each time learning a different lesson from the tests provided by the sea. The Pilgrim has been refitted since its past voyage a year ago. Richard values Jack's experience, given that it's his first journey at sea. Jack assures Richard of his confidence in the Pilgrim, even though it's just a small wooden brig with 2 masts. Jack's aware that wooden vessels are gradually becoming outdated, replaced by new steam-powered ships. But Jack prefers the maneuverability of the Pilgrim and would take it over the steel ships any day. Richard is excited to be aboard. There's so much to explore in life as a merchant seaman, but the guy struggles to acquire his sea legs on the boat. Forceful winds make the Pilgrim move faster, providing Richard with a quick introduction to life at sea. At the same time, nothing can prepare him for what is to be experienced at Cape Horn. It's the southernmost point of land before Antarctica. The gap between the icy continent and Cape Horn holds the infamous Drake Passage. Approximately 700 miles between Cape Horn and the Antarctic Peninsula. Strong winds provide an uninterrupted, steadfast journey toward the Horn. But, as Jack tells Richard, the winds are more concentrated at the Drake Passage. They create a funneling effect, becoming stronger and more unpredictable. Richard is unsure of what this might mean for the Pilgrim, but understands that there's no easier route to travel around South America. A few days pass. The Pilgrim sails by the many islands that make up the western coast of Chile. Although the sea has been relatively calm, Richard continues to deal with his lack of sea legs. His movements are still not very graceful. The constant, ever-swaying deck rises and falls, and Richard finds it hard to get used to the motion. Random large waves hit the Pilgrim from every angle. The ship is quickly approaching Cape Horn. Richard looks towards great thunderous black clouds in the distance. "Welcome to the Horn," Jack says, half laughing. A wry smile upon his face soon disappears. The man gets serious, knowing what awaits them all. Stronger winds start blowing the sails as the crew scrambles to hang onto the ropes. Richard desperately sets to adjust the aft sails, adjusting for the constant change in strong southerly winds. Jack holds firm at the helm, knowing the importance of his role. He's wary of the swell. It can build very quickly the further south they travel. It's crucial the Pilgrim doesn't venture too close to the Horn when they approach. The great darkness that was in the distance is now all around them, filling the sky in every direction. Blackened clouds throw rain and hail down at the crew as they try to resist the enraged weather. Jack is directed by the captain at the helm, changing the direction of the vessel. The temperature has dropped significantly. Barely keeping the water from his eyes, he turns toward the port side bow to provide his face a brief break from the torment of the wind. Looking out into the distance, the man sees the Horn standing alone, surrounded by mist. It's a haunting sight. He steers the Pilgrim along the face of the Horn, the distance getting shorter. The waves shrink in height since the depths become shallower. But these waves are much steeper, and their angle can cause more damage to the wooden vessel. Jack's unsure how much of these waves the Pilgrim can take before the hull is breached. Richard, still posted at the aft sails, watches the water and icebergs floating by. He's unsure how large they actually are, since they're mostly hidden underwater. But he knows to alert Jack if any get too close. Just one iceberg hitting the Pilgrim will be all that the hull can withstand. Dutifully, he watches over the side and into the distance. Icebergs aren't the only thing to look out for. Rogue waves are common in these seas as well. The connecting Antarctic and Pacific Oceans, mixed with stormy weather, form waves together. This creates much larger rogue waves. Such waves have been known to reach up to 100 feet tall. They can destroy most vessels in their path. It'll surely be the end of the Pilgrim if it comes across a rogue wave. Strong currents adjust the route of the Pilgrim, as though the Horn is trying to lure the ship toward its rocky shallows. Slowly, they are getting pulled closer toward the Horn. Jack is fighting the current at the helm. Spinning the wheel, he strains his body as much as he can. Grunting, he plunges the wheel from the port side to starboard and back again. The captain keeps yelling directions. To a novice, they're extremely confusing. But Jack, a hardened veteran, continues to interpret the directions with ease, steering to readjust their course away from the Horn. The captain orders Richard to assess the hull below the decks. With the level of pounding the Drake Passage has provided so far, it's surely harmed the ship in some way. Richard runs to the deck as another sailor yells something at him, but the noise of the sea makes it difficult to hear. A wave hits the side, flowing onto the deck. Richard manages to hang onto the mast before he's almost swept overboard. The entire front deck seems to be underwater. Hanging on as the water rolls off the sides of the ship and waiting for it to clear, Richard watches the Horn slowly go past. Still, it beckons toward the Pilgrim, as though asking for its dues from the crew. The currents are still pulling the ship, while the storm is raging on, with no end of the struggle in sight. The storm is growing ever larger and fiercer. Richard gathers himself to head below and assess the damage. After a slow descent to the lower decks, Richard can finally look over the hull from the ship's quarters. There's no damage from what he can gather. But he's shocked by the depth of the water inside. It's now at waist depth. cups, amongst other things, float in the water. Even inside the ship, the guy can't escape the waves. Unable to make sense of it all, he stands frozen, listening to the almighty power of Mother Nature outside. The sea roars even more wildly, waves constantly thudding against the hull. It sounds like a somber drumbeat, a slow countdown to the demise of the Pilgrim. Richard forces himself back to the terrors of the above decks, grasping onto the rails to carefully walk the slippery stairs. He leaves the disturbing creaks of the wooden decks. They're soon replaced with the strained sounds of the ropes, the yells of other sailors, and the deafening roar of the sea crashing all around him. Jack is at the helm, focused on his role, still fighting the wind and the waves, even with the addition of ice and frost. It seems that the world around him has set its heart to distract the man from his duty, but Jack pushes on determinedly. For 9 days, the Pilgrim fights the constant changes in stormy weather, facing all kinds of obstacles, but the ship manages to make it through. As they leave the storm behind, the crew sets their course north for their final destination. The sight of the sun peeking through the dark clouds is the most relieving thing Richard has ever experienced. Unfortunately, Richard lost his rations at some stage during the storm. At sea, if your rations are lost, it's your own bad luck. Luckily, Jack is kind enough to share some of his.
When you mention your plans to travel to Tristan da Cunha, the chances are your friends won't even know where this remote island is located. No wonder. Tristan da Cunha is considered the most remote inhabited archipelago in the world, with the nearest populated land, St. Helena, around 1,500 miles away. There are only 229 people living on Tristan da Cunha now. In such a close-knit community, everyone is someone's cousin, uncle, or maybe just a friend, but everyone knows each other for sure. There are as few as 10 last names on the island, representing just 10 families. Getting there is quite an adventure. There are no airports on the island, which means your journey will be primarily by sea. Typically, it requires a days-long voyage from South Africa. Only 3 ships regularly service the island, with fewer than a dozen trips each year. Some cruise lines may include it in their itineraries, but travel arrangements must be made well in advance, due to limited berths available on the ship from Cape Town. And you'll also need landing permission. While Tristan doesn't have traditional hotels, there are several guest houses, and you might also have the chance to stay with a local family. They will provide you with a place to sleep, 3 meals a day, and laundry services. 88% of what you pay goes directly to the island family, and only 12% is tax. By the way, the accommodation is surprisingly affordable. It was around £65 for a full board in 2024. Yep, they do use sterling, being a part of overseas British territory. But there's also this local currency called St. Helena Pound, used at parity with sterlings. By the way, it's only been around 80 years since the island started using actual money. In 1942, the naval station began paying cash wages, and it helped Tristan Islanders to move from a barter economy to a cash-based system, and allowed them the novelty of making their first cash purchases. Just a heads up, pack everything you might need before you go, as you definitely won't come across Walmart there. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a supermarket and all, but it's just not the way you're used to, with endless shelves displaying endless oversized mayo jars. Tristan's Island Store, often referred to as the supermarket, lacks plate glass windows and flashy advertisements, and let's be honest, it looks like an abandoned barn from the outside. Still, it plays a crucial role in providing essential goods to complement locally produced foods and woolens. If a resident wants to buy something, they must place orders months in advance for items that arrive with incoming ships. The store operates Monday through Friday. Today, the islanders continue to cultivate their own crops and raise livestock. The supermarket has become a vital source for other essentials like flour, sugar, and a variety of groceries including frozen bread and products typical of the UK or South African supermarkets. And even though the island's economy relies heavily on fishing, especially rock lobsters, Islanders are largely self-sufficient. Let's move to another destination that's super hard to reach, but this time it's a level up in difficulty. I'm talking about the notorious Hypoxia City, the place with the smallest amount of oxygen on the planet. Sure thing, it's a nickname. The real name is La Rinconada. This place is located in Peru. Getting there means climbing over 16,000 feet up into the mountains. And what did you expect from the highest city on Earth? Despite its hard-to-reach location, it houses way more people than Tristan da Cunha, between 30,000 and 50,000. And while the island in the middle of nowhere looks idyllic, the Peruvian city of La Rinconada has very different looks. The urban layout features predominantly low-rise residences, where essential services are limited. La Rinconada is without a reliable supply of running water and lacks a sewage system. The community does not have a waste collection service, which forces residents to either burn or bury their garbage. Moreover, up until the early 2000s, La Rinconada did not have access to electricity. Most things, including the most essential foods, must be brought here from outside. Despite originally being a miner city, right now it has a wider range of activities to make your living. Some people are busy with trading, food, clothes, you name it. Others provide services, and some people even open public restrooms. Architectural-wise, La Rinconada has very little to offer. The pattern is quite predictable. Huts made from corrugated metal that are unstable and rusting. The choice of materials is dictated by practicality. These metal sheets are the lightest and easiest for miners to transport to the glacier. Unfortunately, the homes lack proper insulation, leaving residents shivering in the cold even though they have access to wool from local sheep, which is an excellent insulator. Sturdier rock homes exist but are rare, typically inhabited by wealthier miners. While the architecture might not be particularly captivating, the vistas certainly are. In nearly every spot in La Rinconada, a glance upward reveals La Bella Durmiente, or Sleeping Beauty, a massive glacier towering over the town. Getting to La Rinconada is very hard. First, you'll need to fly into Alejandro Velasco Astete International Airport in Cusco, Peru. Once you're in Cusco, you can catch a train or a bus to Puno, which is right by Lake Titicaca. Here's where it gets a bit tricky. The only way to really get up to La Rinconada is by hitchhiking or finding a ride into the mountains. There might be some buses, but they don't run on a set schedule. If you're up for it, you can rent a car, but be warned, the roads can be pretty rough and tricky to navigate. So a little extra caution goes a long way on this adventure. Unlike Tristan da Cunha, where they adopted cashback in the 1940s, La Rinconada doesn't rely much on it. The economy of this place is based mainly on gold mines. The mines are unguarded, unregulated, and often dangerous. Miners work for 30 days under a cachorreo system, where on the 31st day, they're allowed to take as much ore from the mine as they can carry as a form of payment. La Rinconada has no bank, but it has many storefront fund transfer agencies, which miners use to wire money to their families. Still, they never know how much they're gonna send. Our next destination is Svalbard, a place that might seem unwelcoming due to its climate. But locals embrace everyone with open arms. No visa is required if you want to visit or even work there. Located near the top of the world, Svalbard offers a unique and remote charm. The capital, Longyearbyen, is home to a fascinatingly diverse community, with over 50 nationalities represented among its 2,400 residents. You might even spot a polar bear wandering into town on occasion. The living space is compact. There's just one grocery store, and the streets are numbered instead of named, adding to the town's distinctive feel. Longyearbyen also boasts a university center with around 300 students. Interestingly, every student must learn to use firearms for safety in the surrounding wilderness. Originally, it was founded as a mining town, just like La Rinconada, but the focus has shifted mainly to tourism. However, a quirky tradition remains from its mining days. Visitors and residents alike take off their shoes when entering hotels and restaurants, a practice born out of the need to keep coal dust at bay. The last destination for today is Palmerston Island, a remote coral atoll in the Cook Islands, located about 290 miles northwest of Rarotonga. Famous traveler James Cook visited it on June 16, 1774, and the place was uninhabited at the time, despite ancient graves found there. Today, the island supports a small population of just 25 residents, primarily descendants of 19th century English sailor William Marsters. Marsters arrived in 1863 with 2 Polynesian wives and later added a third. He fathered 23 children. Fishing is the mainstay of the local economy, resembling subsistence living due to the island's isolation. Modern amenities and communication services are available. Although there's no airport, cargo ships visit periodically. If you're a fan of Dr. Pimple Popper, you're probably freaking out right now, itching to squeeze out every little blackhead from those lip contours. But this is actually a hill formation that you can find in Garb, Sudan. Knowing that perhaps makes it all the more creepy because it looks like the crack in the middle is swallowing up everything around it. This black hole scenario brings to mind our next stop, Vostok Island. This eerie spot is a 59-acre coral atoll situated in the southwestern Pacific Ocean, about 400 miles northwest of Tahiti. If you check it out on Google Earth today, it looks like it's been totally blacked out, sparking all sorts of wild theories. People keep saying that this place is some top-secret base, or even a fictional island straight out of Lost. But what we see here is actually just a dense, dark green forest made up of Pisonia trees. Since nobody lives there and hardly anyone ever visits, the island is pretty much untouched by humans. This massive star, or mandala, is situated just outside Beatty, Nevada. It has got the internet all puzzled, with people trying to figure out if it's evidence of some kind of extraterrestrial activity. To add to the mystery, this spot is right by the Tonopah Test Range, which is also known as the famous Area 52. Despite its creepiness, it's probably just one of the thousands of crop circles that gained fame after Google Earth came along. This spiral formation right here is also located in Nevada, and it definitely looks like another chilling crop circle. But things get even stranger if you use the Street View option. As you zoom in closer and closer, you'll notice that it's made up of carefully arranged rocks. This labyrinth, so to speak, is part of an open-air museum situated in the ghost town of Rhyolite. And if that's not creepy enough, take a look around and you'll see dozens of eerie men in white cloaks. Despite their lifelike appearance, these silhouettes are actually statues from an installation created by a Belgian artist in the 80s. Even stranger than stumbling upon a large circle on the ground is finding a bunch of them. Our next location in Wyoming is filled with peculiar circle structures to the point where it's hard to count them all. During the 20th century, this U.S. state shifted from a farming economy to an industrial one, dominated by the extraction of oil, gas, and coal. So, these circles are likely remnants of a tank farm. I mean, places where oil storage tanks used to be located. If you want to avoid nightmares, I highly recommend not searching for the mausoleum of Emil Becker in Poland. If you happen to find it by using the Street View mode, prepare yourself to face an abandoned place with the most terrifying sculpture there is. Oh, the creeps. Keeping on the spooky side, let's head to an isolated corner of Kazakhstan, where you can find a pentagram etched into the Earth's surface. This formation is huge, measuring roughly 1,200 feet in diameter. Before you jump to conclusions about this formation being related to some kind of underworld deity worship, it's worth noting that the pentagram actually turns out to be the outline of a park designed in the shape of a star. The star shape is marked by roadways, which are now lined with trees, making the star shape even more distinct in aerial photos. You can spot this peculiar symbol from quite a distance. At first glance, it might even resemble an otherworldly alphabet, as if a highly intelligent civilization is trying to send us an alert message. But this mystery is already solved. We are in De Hoge Veluwe, a Dutch national park located in the province of Gelderland. And these lines are actually part of the park's logo. Search for these coordinates to find what looks like a land formation straight out of an extraterrestrial landscape, or perhaps a set from Avatar. This place, located in Inner Mongolia, China, is believed to be a granite mine. But it's a bit of a mystery why it has such a striking blue tone on Google Earth. If you check it out on Microsoft Bing Maps, for example, the same location appears in a much more natural tone. In the Australian outback lies a massive geoglyph known as the Maori Man. Discovered in the late 90s, it appears to represent an indigenous Australian man hunting with a boomerang or stick. The figure stretches for more than 2 miles in length and about 1.6 miles wide. It has deep furrows carved into the ground, which adds to the complexity of its formation and origin. Despite efforts to uncover its purpose, its origin is still a mystery. This is Desert Breath, located in the Sahara. Like many things you have seen in this video, this formation also sparks speculation about it being created by extraterrestrial beings. But a quick Google search clears up that mystery. It turns out this is an art installation created by a group of 3 Greek artists back in 1997. They went all out, moving around a whopping 280,000 square feet of sand and even creating a large pool in the middle of it. Egypt still holds many mysteries, and you can explore them yourself with Google Earth. That's how some people stumbled upon this striking triangular-shaped plateau and immediately jumped to the conclusion that they discovered a hidden pyramid. However, experts quickly dashed their hopes. They believe there's no plausible explanation for a pyramid to exist in this area, located 8 miles west of the Nile Valley edge in Upper Egypt. This discovery is likely nothing more than a hill that has suffered the effects of erosion, combined with a heavy dose of wishful thinking. In some cases, nature itself is responsible for creating frightening sculptures, like the Badlands Guardian in Alberta, Canada. If you look at it from above, you'll notice not 1, but 2 human heads emerging from the landscape. These gigantic beings were sculpted by rainwater erosion on layers of clay-rich soil. Ironically, additional human-made structures give the impression that this one is wearing wired headphones. It seems that deserts are a prime spot for discovering strange images on Google Earth. So our next stop is China. In the Gobi Desert, you'll come across zigzagging white lines that look kind of random. The first challenge for armchair experts was figuring out what these structures were made of, as it's hard to tell if they're painted on or dug into the landscape. There's still a lot of speculation about it on the internet, but the most plausible explanation is that this structure is used for calibrating satellites. This way, satellite cameras can focus on these large grids to orient themselves in space. Check out this intact plane that seems to have sunk beneath the ocean off the coast of Crooked Island, Bahamas. Some viral videos claim it's a crashed plane belonging to the infamous Pablo Escobar. The truth is that something lying on the bottom of the ocean can't be that visible, so it's more likely that it's a plane that was actually flying when Google captured these images. However, there is a strong belief that Pablo Escobar did have a plane that crashed nearby, but it was in another part of the Bahamas known as Norman's Cay. You can still spot it in shallow turquoise waters. Just search for Norman's Cay sunken plane, and there it is. If you're convinced that extraterrestrials are already among us, then go ahead and type in these coordinates on Google Earth. Explore the area using Street View, and wow, what is it? Of course, we're not talking about visitors from other planets, but this shadow of a gigantic creature still gives me the creeps. Turns out, it's just a person lugging around one of those 360-degree Street View cameras tucked away in a trekker backpack. So hey, if you take a good look around Google Earth, you might stumble upon more of these elongated necked beings walking around the globe. On September 16th of 2023, without warning, the Earth began to hum. A low, strange vibration reverberated through the crust. This set off seismic alarms all across the globe. For 9 days straight, the planet was pulsing with this horrifying rhythm, and scientists had no idea what was going on. Meanwhile, the total disaster was happening in Greenland. It wasn't an earthquake. They knew that much. They could tell it by the rhythm. Since we all live on giant tectonic plates, they constantly move and slide on magma like icebergs on water. Sometimes, as they move, they can rub against each other or collide or break. In any case, all this causes an incredible release of energy that sends shockwaves through the ground. That's when we feel the ground literally shaking, and it's what we call an earthquake. These vibrations we feel are called seismic waves. Seismometers pick them up as pings or rumbles. In a typical earthquake, they create a bunch of different frequencies. It's a crazy chaotic mix of low and high frequencies, like smashing every piano key. What was weird about the Greenland event is that the signals weren't like that at all. It was a steady, single-frequency vibration, as if some ancient machine was stirring beneath the earth. It's like one piano key being struck over and over, creating a doom-like, repetitive sound. Turns out, what they were hearing wasn't the noise of tectonic plates going wild. It was a phenomenon seismologists had never seen before. The days passed, and the mysterious noise just kept going. The vibrations repeated every 90 seconds, echoing around the world. The hunt for answers was growing more desperate. Seismologists had no idea what they were dealing with. They had to gather a huge international team of 68 people from 15 countries. All these scientists were gathering seismic data, satellite images, and doing some advanced math for several days, until they finally realized who the culprit was. Water. It all happened in a remote, desolate region of East Greenland. This place is full of fjords, narrow inlets of the sea between high cliffs, kinda like deep water-filled valleys surrounded by towering rocky sides. In this area, surrounded by jagged peaks and icy waters, the air was still. The landscape seemingly frozen in time. Nothing here changed much for years. Until one day. A colossal landslide has unfolded in the Dixon Fjord. One of those steep mountainsides towering over the fjord at almost 4,000 feet high collapsed in a massive landslide. Picture a huge chunk of this mountain crumbling and crashing down into the fjord below. This sent a deluge of rock and ice crashing into the water. The impact was just apocalyptic, 882 million cubic feet of debris. That's enough ice and rock to fill 10,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools, or 10 Great Pyramids of Giza. And all this nightmare hurled into the water with such force that it kick-started a tsunami about 360 feet high, taller than the Statue of Liberty, into the air. What's crazy is that this incredibly powerful wave was trapped in the fjord by narrow cliffs, unable to escape. It's like water sloshing in a closed bathtub. For 9 days, the mega tsunami continued to churn through it. That's why we heard this endless hum. It was a rhythmic back and forth of the water slamming against the walls. The shockwaves were rippling deep into Earth's crust, vibrations so strong that they were picked up by seismometers around the globe. This was a phenomenon so rare, so unprecedented, that it left scientists stunned. It turned out to be a perfect storm of elements. A glacier, weakened by years of warming, could no longer bear the weight of the mountain above. This collapse was inevitable, and the chaos literally shook the Earth to its core. And people often hang out in this area with cruise ships passing by. We're lucky that no lives were lost in the disaster. It was a close call though. A tourist ship stranded in the area just 2 days before narrowly escaped the tsunami's reach by pure luck. But it doesn't mean there were no losses. The waves destroyed a nearby Inuit site, which was there untouched for over 200 years. They also swept away the huts at a research station that were about 43 miles away. The vibrations traveled from Greenland to the South Pole in less than an hour. That just shows how dangerous events like this can be. And this isn't the only place where such catastrophes are happening. In the beautiful California community of Rancho Palos Verdes, the ground is shifting so quickly that it's tearing homes apart. The land there has always been kinda unstable. It has some unique geology. It's built on soft, clay-rich soil and sits on a geological fault line, which makes it prone to landslides. This means that this land is prone to slow, natural shifting over many years, even when no crazy weather is happening. It's been like this for decades, but usually it's slow and pretty manageable, like about a foot a year. Imagine a tree that you played with as a kid moving 20 feet to the left as you grow up. For decades, residents adapted. They built their homes on adjustable beams. This helped the houses to move with the land, and that strategy worked well until now. Recently, things have been getting much worse in the community. Now, the land is moving by a foot in a single week. That would be like if the same tree moved almost 960 feet since you were a child. The past 2 years have also caused some heavy rains, and the weather has been getting worse. This increased water content in the soil. The land became heavier and more prone to rapid movement. Now, this once idyllic seaside escape turned into a disaster zone. Cracks have appeared in closets, gardens, and roads, growing larger with each passing day. Streets that were once smooth are now buckled and twisted, with roads turning into a crazy theme park. Houses that once stood firm are being ripped from their foundations, some of them split in half. One of the houses had its front door 8 feet off the ground. Entire neighborhoods have been plunged into chaos. Utility companies had to switch off gas and electricity indefinitely to prevent potential disasters. The hardest hit is the coastal neighborhood of Portuguese Bend, where residents are living on the edge, literally. It always had amazing ocean views and cool sea breezes, with horses and peacocks still wandering the tree-lined streets. But now, it's like an earthquake hit. Only this time, the earth isn't stopping. For many, this place feels like paradise, if only the land would stop shifting beneath their feet. So the locals don't give up. Some of them had to leave, but many are determined to stay and fight, despite the destruction. But they still have to pour in hundreds of thousands of dollars to save their properties. People have installed generators to keep the lights on and set up sewer systems and pumps to drain the groundwater causing the landslides. Some say that the only way for these neighborhoods to survive might be to go completely off-grid, installing power walls to store energy and stuff like that. People are trying their best to run the sewer system off generators. They hope that they could get rid of this water in the soil that's causing these hellish landslides in the first place. They're determined to fight, but they will need help and support from the government to fight this disaster. Landslides are actually more common across the US than many might think. And new maps and data show that tons of people in the country might be in danger. Scientists managed to create the first very detailed, very cool map that shows where these landslides might happen, county by county. It's based on a lot of data and the history of 1 million previous landslides. They say that nearly 40% of the United States is at risk of experiencing landslide activity, which could lead to some insane catastrophes in certain areas. Luckily, now both residents and engineers can keep this in mind. But all this shows how vulnerable we are to natural disasters, and how we should always stay alerted.
One day, you're walking down the street wearing a mask connected to an oxygen tank. There are no clouds in the sky. There have been no clouds anywhere in the world for several months. You notice a girl who is having trouble breathing. You let her borrow your mask so that she can breathe. Then someone screams, "Take cover!" Now there's a loud whistle, and you see some kind of invisible force tearing trees out of the ground and pushing away parked cars. You hide in the nearest house. A strong icy wind sweeps past. All the strange changes in this world are caused by the atmosphere that is turned upside down. So, to understand what would happen if Earth's atmosphere changed so dramatically, we must first understand what an atmosphere is. In simple words, this is a blanket of air covering our planet. It warms us, protects us, and allows us to breathe. The atmosphere has 5 main layers: troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, and exosphere. The troposphere is the heaviest. About 80% of the total mass of the atmosphere is here. Clouds, dust, and water particles fly in this first layer. It's filled with more oxygen than the other layers and exerts the strongest atmospheric pressure on us. The fact is that all the air around us has weight. At ground level, it's roughly 15 pounds per square inch. It envelops all material objects, but we don't feel 15 pounds per square inch, or psi, because our internal pressure is equal to that. The air is dispersed in the atmosphere and on the ground. The higher we go, the lower the atmospheric pressure and oxygen levels are. For example, climbers, while ascending a high mountain, use oxygen tanks to help their bodies adapt to the changes in the air. There's artificial pressure inside airplanes to make people feel comfortable during takeoff, landing, and the entire flight. So, the most saturated and, at the same time, the heaviest air is in the first layer. But in an inverted atmosphere, it would be the farthest one from us. The next layer is the stratosphere, and it performs the function of a shield. The stratosphere consists of ozone, which absorbs most of the solar radiation and prevents it from reaching the ground. In simple words, the sun's rays are filtered through the stratosphere. They lose their harmful properties, and our planet receives safe heat. Then the mesosphere comes. You can experience the lowest temperatures in the world in this layer. Atmospheric pressure is low here, but the air is dense enough to burn meteorites passing through the mesosphere. The thermosphere follows the mesosphere. It takes a hot blow from the sun's rays. The temperature here is about 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit, almost 1.5 times higher than in a volcano. And the final layer is the exosphere. This is the last frontier of our atmosphere before open space begins. The pressure here is so weak that gas molecules escape and head toward faraway stars. So here's how everything works in an ordinary atmosphere. The sun's rays shine on the exosphere, where almost nothing happens. Then they heat the thermosphere and pass through the cold mesosphere. Sunlight cools down while filtering through the ozone layer in the stratosphere. After that, its rays pass through the heaviest and densest layer of the troposphere and reaches the ground. And now, let's see how all this would work in an inverted atmosphere. The troposphere, with all the clouds, water, and oxygen, would rise to the top. The sun's rays would burn all the moisture. Clouds would disappear from the sky. Then the sun's rays would cool slightly while passing through the ozone layer. The stratosphere would absorb all the radiation. Then the rays would pass through the cold mesosphere and quickly reach the surface of our planet. The thermosphere and exosphere would have almost no effect on the beams. If our planet had an inverted atmosphere, a massive drought would begin. All the rain clouds would get dispersed in the top layers of the atmosphere, and all the moisture on Earth would start to evaporate and accumulate in the exosphere and thermosphere. Thus, we would get a new troposphere. It would be filled with gases, water particles, and dust. The previous troposphere, which would now be at the very top, would lose its weight and turn into an exosphere. But what would happen to oxygen at this moment? The higher we go, the lower the pressure and the less oxygen. But in the inverted atmosphere, there would be less oxygen and less pressure closest to the surface of the Earth. At first, people would feel as if they were on Mount Everest. Many would lose consciousness or experience severe dizziness. Others would have bad migraines and feel unwell because of dilated blood vessels. But what would happen to people who spend a lot of time climbing high mountains? They would adapt more easily, and the rest would have to do the same in the inverted atmosphere. And when people felt comfortable in such conditions, they would begin to enjoy the benefits. We would feel less air resistance. It would be like a vacuum in space. Cars would drive faster and use less gasoline. People would create trains moving at the speed of sound. While running, we would be less tired. But at the same time, planes would fly much more slowly since they would have to go through thick layers of air. We wouldn't have rain for long periods of time, and it would always be sunny. Instead of bad weather, we would face jet streams. Now, these powerful icy winds circulate in the upper layers of the atmosphere. They blow over the top of Mount Everest and pose a serious danger to climbers. When the sun's rays heat the air, it rises and encounters cold winds. They push warm air even higher, where it turns into jet streams. These winds are howling at 70 miles per hour. They can easily rip out a tree or tear off some roofs. We would have to build sturdy houses and shelters to survive this calamity. But in the end, the surface of Earth would warm up and push jet streams up. In other words, even if the atmosphere turned upside down, everything would return to its place sooner or later. Perhaps this would happen in a couple of hundred years or millions of years. In any case, the laws of physics and nature would return our planet to its former state. But all living creatures may not live long enough to see it. But what if the planet's atmosphere was constantly flipping over? This is unlikely to happen on Earth, but one space object in the solar system has an inverted atmosphere. All the solid parts in it evaporate and rise, and the atmosphere sinks and becomes denser. Thus, the ground and the sky on this space body keep switching up. This strange celestial object is Pluto. That used to be a planet. The average distance between Pluto and the Sun is about 3.7 billion miles. It also has an elliptical or
Freezes? Well, it sure sounds creepy, but couldn't possibly happen in real life, right? Wrong. You can see mind-blowing frozen waves in Antarctica. These waves occur when the ice gets compressed and the ever-increasing pressure squeezes the air bubbles out. As for the beautiful blue color, it's the result of ice melting and refreezing. When the summer begins, an ordinary-looking river in Colombia transforms into a liquid rainbow. Caño Cristales, also known as the most beautiful river in the world, sparkles in 5 colors: red, black, green, blue, and yellow. It only looks like this for 6 months of the year because the aquatic plant that gives it the bright hues needs the right water level and amount of sunshine to use its magic. Australia is home to a unique horizontal waterfall on the coast of the Kimberley region. It's really just a fast tidal flow moving through 2 narrow aligned rocks. The tides can rise 30 feet. The falls reverse whenever the tide changes. Also down under is the biggest single rock in the world. It's so big that it even looks like a large hill. It has a circumference of 6 miles and is 1,150 feet high. The edges are eroded since the rock has been around forever. These mud brick buildings are 7 stories high and were built out of fertile soil, hay, and water that were made into bricks and left to bake under the sun for days. The ground floors were used for keeping livestock and grains, and the upper levels were places for socializing and catching good views. Antelope Canyon in Arizona, also known as the place where water runs through rock, has 2 sections of slotted canyons. Throughout the years, the water running through sandstone has created a picturesque formation like no other. If you ever set foot on the arid soil of the Namib Desert in Namibia, prepare yourself for an eerie picture. You'll see countless circular patches between 6 feet to 50 feet in diameter. Organized in a honeycomb-like pattern, they stretch across 1,500 miles toward the horizon. These patches are also known as fairy circles, and you might be disappointed by the explanation of this mystery. No one knows for sure the origin of these circles, even though there are numerous theories, from the radioactivity of the soil to the activity of sand termites. Mount Haleakala in Hawaii is one of the quietest places in the world. National park managers nearly failed to find any sounds to measure here. The place translates from Hawaiian as House of the Sun. It formed thanks to a volcano that got active 1 million years ago. The lava flows built up over the years and grew into a mountain. It has its own climate and weather that's impossible to predict. It takes almost a week by ship from South Africa to travel to the world's most isolated settlement of Edinburgh of the Seven Seas. You'd need special permission from the local government to visit as a tourist. About 300 locals all treat each other as family, grow their own food, and keep their island impeccably clean. Daintree Forest in Australia is the oldest rainforest in the world. It has been around for over 100 million years. Daintree is home to some unique animal species, 12,000 different types of insects, and about half of Australia's frog, butterfly, and bat population. The rainforest also has around 3,000 types of plant species. Rocks that travel are called sailing stones because they seem to move across the dry lake bed of Racetrack Playa in Death Valley National Park, California. As the rocks move, they leave behind a creepy trail that used to have scientists baffled. After all, some of the boulders weigh more than 660 pounds. On top of that, some of the trails are curved, while others are mostly straight, with unexpected turns to the right or the left. But eventually, NASA experts cracked the mystery in 2006. It turns out that in winter, the lake fills with water, covering the boulders at the bottom in ice. And since ice is pretty buoyant, underwater movements and winds make the stones move across the lake bed. In their wake, they leave bizarre tracks, only seen when the water evaporates in the summer. Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela is often called the lightning capital of the world. Thunderstorms arise here 300 days of the year, with a peak in September. Sometimes there are up to 200 flashes in a minute. It happens because cool air coming from the surrounding Andes meets with warm air from the Caribbean Sea and generates electricity. Some places on Earth have less gravity than others. Canada's Hudson Bay, for example, used to be covered by a super thick and heavy glacier during the last ice age. The ice had pushed tons of rock mass outward when it started to melt. The smaller the mass of an object, the less gravity it has. It'll take another 5,000 years for the Earth to get into its original shape in this spot. Until then, you'll always weigh less here than anywhere else in the world. Five Flower Lake in China's Zhoujiago Valley changes its color from amber yellow to emerald green, dark jade to light turquoise, and sometimes coral. It never freezes thanks to underwater hot springs and never melts or dries up, unlike other neighboring lakes. The locals believe it's made up of pieces of a mirror that fell down from the sky. The surrounding valley has some narrow conic karst landforms, spectacular waterfalls, around 140 bird species, and giant panda, along with other endangered plant and animal species. Cape Denison in the Commonwealth Bay in Antarctica is the windiest place on the planet. It has unusual downslope winds. They are formed because of the continent's dome shape and the always cold climate. These winds are so fast and strong, they ruin the measuring instruments and the masts they are attached to. The record speed so far was 200 miles per hour. The Sahara Desert, which takes up 10% of the African continent, is extremely hot and dry. That's why it's one of the top places with the clearest skies. There's hardly ever a cloud above it. This, plus the remoteness from any civilization, makes it one of the best spots for stargazing. In Denmark, people experience blackout-type effects on a pretty regular basis. Just look how weird it is. But it gets even more bizarre when you find out that birds are the cause of this unusual phenomenon. Every spring and fall, millions of starlings begin their annual migration from Sweden, Finland, and Norway toward Britain, Belgium, and France. Denmark is the lucky place where you can observe Sort Sol, the Danish name for black sun. The birds travel in large flocks, which makes it easier to exchange information and stay warm. Before the birds land, they perform movements that look like dancing, but in fact, they are making different formations in an attempt to shoo predators away. And although the birds fly in highly synchronized patterns, people think that the huge flock changes its shape chaotically. The dark sun lasts only 20 minutes during sunset, and you have to be either fast or lucky to see this phenomenon. The secret of the cotton candy color of Pink Sand Beach in Barbuda is the crushed corals on it and tiny single-celled red organisms living beneath them. You can see that famous shade when the waves are strong enough to wash that mix ashore. The secret of impeccable cleanliness of this place is that it has no public facilities and is less crowded than other Caribbean islands. It took thousands of years to form Picaninny Ponds in Australia. This whole time, underground freshwater was slowly moving to the surface through limestone. It formed a large underwater cavern with white limestone walls. You'd need a special permit to dive here, and it's definitely worth it. Batara Gorge Waterfall has 3 natural bridges for anyone to walk across, take awesome pictures, and even have picnics. The waterfall is a result of limestone erosion that's been going on for millions of years, even though it looks like someone punched a hole right in the middle. It's located in the village of Tanarine, which is just 2 hours away from the capital Beirut. A village in the Meghalaya state in India is known as the wettest on the planet, according to the Guinness World Records. The average annual rainfall here is about 470 inches. It's a result of warm, moist monsoon winds coming from the Bay of Bengal, bringing clouds full of rain. It flows into rivers and waterfalls and never stops. The locals that work in the fields always wear basket-like covers to protect themselves somehow. The village of Leknes, with a population of about 3,500, is located in Norway, above the Arctic Circle. It has an unusually warm climate compared to other places in the same latitude. In January, the average minimum is 32 degrees Fahrenheit and rarely drops below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. July average temperature is 53 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty regular for many places in Europe. They say this place is swarming with money. It's been stored there for centuries, but no one managed to take it away from this island. Treasure hunters have been bewitched with this place since 1795. Many people have tried their luck looking for the treasure that could be hidden there by the Spanish pirates or even by the Knights Templar. But today, it's impossible to get there, as it's a private place, so all you can do is book an ocean tour around this island. Otherwise, you can take a peek at it in a TV reality show starring the Legina brothers, Rick and Marty, who are a team of enthusiasts looking for the treasures of Oak Island in Nova Scotia, Canada. Yeah, seems like there's no place where TV producers can't get to. One of the most famous discoveries out there was the so-called Money Pit. Despite the promising name, it wasn't full of money. Now we have to jump to 200 years ago. The Money Pit was first found by a 16-year-old kid in 1795. One day, Daniel McGinnis went fishing at Oak Island. He saw a tree there. Unsurprisingly, it was an oak, and it had weird markings. They didn't seem to be natural, so Daniel decided to check the area. He then saw a sunken patch of ground and started digging immediately. His 2 friends helped him out, but instead of treasures, the guys only found logs placed underground at regular intervals. It looked like a place where someone could hide money or jewels, but nothing precious was found. However, there was something curious down that pit. Someone found a granite stone there, and it had an engraved inscription on it. There were many attempts to decode it, but most of them ended up in failure. There's one translation though, and it says, 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. Yeah, McGinnis and his friends should have dug harder. The next fun thing about the Money Pit is the coconut fiber found down there. They say that large amounts of this fiber were found at a depth of 60 feet. It may not surprise you, but I have to remind you of one thing. Oak Island is in Nova Scotia, Canada. Coconut trees do not grow there. The nearest one is about 1,500 miles from Nova Scotia, which makes it obvious that someone brought this fiber purposefully. Researchers came up with an idea that coconut fiber could have been used to make ropes and lower all the treasures down the pit. Next up, we have not one, but two mysteries. In the late 1800s, the Oak Island Treasure Company was thoroughly inspecting and excavating the island. Everyone believed something enormous was hidden there. These guys managed to drill 153 feet underground. That's like 15 stop signs stacked one on top of the other. You might have guessed that they didn't find pounds of gold and diamonds, but they found a manuscript. There's a theory claiming that it's one of Shakespeare's lost manuscripts. Some scientists believe that it was hidden there by the writer and scientist Francis Bacon, the true author of Shakespeare's works. Yeah, rumor has it was Francis and not William who wrote all the plays and sonnets. But there's no proof it was really so. The Money Pit may be the most popular shaft on Oak Island, but it's not the only one, and it's not the first. Before the Money Pit discovery, treasure hunters were drilling at Smith's Cove. While damming there, they found a wooden piece. It was a U-shaped formation that had Roman numerals. After a more thorough inspection, the specialists realized it was supposedly dated to 1769. The Money Pit was discovered 26 years later. This fact created many speculations that this structure might have been part of the real shaft with treasures everyone was looking for. Now, look at this Templar coin. It wasn't the first discovery on the island, but it was crucial in some way. Even if it may not sound like a big deal today, in medieval times, those coins would amass an insane amount of wealth. They were typically stored in European fortresses. For the treasure hunters, this coin was a sure sign there was more to be found on the island. The logic is simple. If there's one coin of that kind, there must be something else. And they were right. It wasn't the only Templar discovery. On the southwest shore of the island, a crossbow bolt was found. Experts say it dates back to the 13th century. But, once again, that wasn't something the treasure hunters were after. Some more coins were found on the island. Rick and Marty Legina retrieved this precious piece from a swamp. The coin is made of copper, and this time, it originated from Spain. When it was found, the Legina brothers could only see the number 8 engraved on it. But later on, some experts studied this coin and claimed it was made sometime around the 17th century. They managed to clean it well and saw the date 1652 engraved on the back of this coin. There's a theory stating that Spanish explorers found some treasure but hid it instead of taking it to the king. So maybe this coin just dropped out of the chest full of coins and jewels and is part of the treasure everyone was after. Or someone could have accidentally lost it while looking for the treasure. Who knows? One more famous treasure hunter is Gary Drayton. Gary and his team, together with Rick Legina, came across 2 coins while metal detecting the island. Those were 17th century King Charles II Britannia coins. One of them had a very clear inscription on it, stating that the coin was minted back in 1771. Another swamp treasure of possibly Spanish origin is also here. This time, it's a silver ring. A specialist studied it closely and reported that it had been repaired twice. The ring was once made bigger, and it was also made smaller ones. It's decorated with a floral design, which was popular in Europe in the 1730s. Among all the other curious things, Rick and Marty Legina found a silver button at Isaac Point. The button's pretty old. It supposedly dates back to the middle of the 18th century, and the notorious Money Pit was discovered later. This is why it wasn't a big deal of a find. It could simply belong to some farmer peacefully raising livestock on the island. There's no official record of any chest full of gems and coins found on Oak Island, but enthusiasts did find some jewels there. First off, the team found a brooch with a magnificent red gem. They mistakenly thought it was a ruby, but a professional gemologist stated it was a garnet. The piece was made of silver, and it's pretty old. Experts believe it was made around the 15 or 1600s. Another brooch they found didn't have any gems on it. but it had an intricate design. It's a brooch with a leaf design and an ornate rope. There are 13 branches of the leaf, which instantly created more mystery to the whole treasure hunting. First off, there's a carving with a 13-branched tree on a rock on the north shore of this island. What's more, many people believe that the number 13 is important to the Knights Templar. The enthusiasts also found a brooch not far away from the place where Daniel McGinnis, the guy who found the money pit, lived. The brooch was shown to a professional gemologist, Charles Luton Brain. He had to break it to the team that there were no gems adorning this piece of jewelry. In fact, the stone that seemed to be a gem was just a piece of glass. It was processed using a special technique though, so it was leaded glass. The enthusiasts decided to study the brooch even more and found out that part of the brooch was made of gold. The specialists claim that the brooch dates back to the 14th century. Was it the treasure everyone was looking for?